Right around 7, so we're going to get started. Thank you all for coming. This is our first hybrid event, which we're really excited about. And in person, had Zoom, lots of Zoom last year, so excited to be able to offer both now. We are the Association of Fundraising Professionals. Our board is here, and we're really excited to work with all of you, so thank you all for coming in person and on Zoom. If you have any questions throughout the Zoom chat will be monitored, so we will be getting those. So don't worry about that. And then we are this year and then next year, we are focusing on DEI within Association of Fundraising Professionals. So this is a great opportunity to kick that off and start off those events for this year and next year to come. And now Jennifer, who is co-director of the Nonprofit Philanthropy and Leadership Certificate, Nonprofit Leadership and Philanthropy Certificate. I'm in it. I should know the name of this. Oh my goodness. She will now talk more about the program and other housekeeping items.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Isabel. Like Isabel said, my name is Jennifer Vick. I'm co-director of the Nonprofit Leadership and Philanthropy Certificate. I also serve as the faculty advisor for the Association of Fundraising Professionals Collegiate Chapter, which launched last year. And as Isabel said, it was all Zoom. Students who were on the board and the members, I think there's about 43 members now in the collegiate chapter. Did a fabulous job getting everything up and running last year. And of course, we're very excited to have the option to have some in-person events this year also. We have about 35 people who registered through Zoom. And just wanted to let you know that this presentation is going to be recorded, and we will share that through sending it out through email to anyone who registered on Zoom. Students will receive it, a link to the presentation through email. And if you're a member in the community who is joining us in person, the easiest way to access the recording, if you want to share it with others, would be to go back to your original invitation, and the website for the collegiate chapter is listed there. And you just go to the AFP collegiate chapter website, and it will be posted right there. So we'll be communicating all the ways that you can get access to the recording. But now I guess I'll just introduce co-director Deb Duncase, who will introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you, Jennifer. It is such, honestly, such a true pleasure for me to welcome Juan Francisco Fernandez, or as I fondly know him as Paco, to our University of Iowa class tonight. I've known Paco for many years. The nonprofit world is a force for good in this world in so many ways. And I think the thing that I admire so much about Paco is he devotes himself to the nonprofit world. He devotes himself to the people that he serves, and he's inspirational, as I think you'll soon find out. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Deb.
Over to you.
All right. Thank you, and good evening to all. My name is Juan Francisco Fernandez. People in Iowa know me as Paco. I am the executive director for a nonprofit called Casa Colibrí. Casa Colibrí is a nonprofit that started around 16 or 17 years ago. But the original set of people that started pursuing this dream crossed paths with me in 2001. Nonprofit world is something that I never thought I was going to get myself into. And it's very interesting how things just evolve in a very natural way. I used to be in the tourism industry in my country. I come from a country called Guatemala. It's in Central America, right under Mexico. And one day, some people asked me if I wanted to join in and just translate. But little did I know I was going to be faced and encountered with a facet of my country that I did not know existed. And as time went by and I was able to understand more differences in reality within my own country, it just got so much into me, it's very addictive. It's something that you need to really sometimes hold yourself and your feelings, because things grow spontaneously, and things just tend to grow in a very natural way with good intentions. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned by that spontaneous process that one can have, and little by little you can get to form something that is very collaborative, very community driven, culturally appropriate, and you can create bridges with people from Iowa, for instance, where we collaborate a lot with some nonprofits that work in Guatemala that are based in Iowa as well. So it is a nonprofit that's originated in the United States. There is a counterpart in Guatemala called Proyectos Humanitarios Casa Colibri, which is the Guatemalan entity that executes the projects that are done through this nonprofit. So, people would say, well, what is Casa Calibri? What does it mean? Who are they? What do they do? And I think I got a better way of explaining ourselves. So I hope you enjoy this as much as I do, at least.
People walk days to get here, as far as 20 miles, which in the mountains, when you're sick or walking with children, takes a long time. In Mayan mythology, the hummingbird stands for refuge or looking out for you. The hummingbird looked out for the young king. And so I just thought we would call it House of the Hummingbird, Casa Colibri, because it's a place of refuge. We're looking out for people, but not in a patronizing way. More like this is a place you can come and find help. Casa Colibri is a medical clinic in the Huehuetenango province of northwest Guatemala, about 5.5 miles from the border of Mexico. We got involved with Casa Colibri before it was Casa Colibri. We got involved in Guatemala in 2001.
I'm a Rotarian, and a fellow Rotarian came to our club and said that she needed a medical needs assessment in the area.
My husband said, yeah, I'd love to go, I can do that. And then the person that wanted him to go said, well, now we need a Spanish translator, and I happen to speak Spanish. And so he came home and asked me, not knowing if I'd say yes or no, and I said, I'd love to, that sounds like fun, an adventure. It turned out to be life-changing, obviously. There was another gentleman on that trip, a Guatemalan, who also came as a translator. And we were absolutely blessed to have met right from the start.
Getting involved in this project started 18 years ago. Back then, I was working in the tourism industry, and one has no idea really that these kinds of circumstances exist when you live in the city.
They were a really victimized population, and they fled from these areas during the worst of the war. Then when the peace accords were signed, they slowly made their way back, but basically they had to start completely over. That's why we're in such a remote place, because this is where they came to rebuild from absolutely nothing.
It takes a day to fly to Guatemala and drive 6 hours to where we spend the night, and then another 6 hours in the morning to get to this area.
They had so many needs, not only medical needs, but needs in the area of schooling and literacy, needs in the area of clean water and sanitation.
We stayed in a school the first night, and I use the term lightly because there was nothing in that building that would say that it was a school. There was no books, there were no notebooks, papers, nothing. And I happened to ask the teacher, what do you use to teach reading? You don't have any books, you don't have any newspapers, you don't have any written words. And he just basically said, we do the best we can. I looked around at the people and looked at their faces, and I was just overcome. I was overwhelmed with what I felt was expected, and I kind of bolted out of the room and went behind the building and just sobbed, because it was like, I'm only one person. I can't do this. Being a school teacher, I thought, well, I could get some books, and it was easy. It was easy. People want to help. We knocked on a couple of doors. We asked a couple of people. We were able to put a small library in that far, far remote place. And of course, once you put a library in one school, word gets out, and we had a couple more requests. And then just by telling our story, more and more people just wanted to help. And that's really how we came to this point.
When we first came here, really what we saw was what is now called extreme poverty. Since then, people have been able to climb out of extreme poverty, not to middle class, but have started to improve their lives.
Our primary areas of focus are disease prevention, treatment, basic literacy, education is the second one. And the third one is infrastructure, which for us, that means clean water and sanitation. One thing that we have focused on quite heavily is improving the maternal and infant death rate in this area. When we did our needs assessment, the official numbers were as high as 50% infant death and 25% maternal in childbirth.
It's harder than what we're used to as pregnancy. I mean, most women have multiple children, and they'll have one in their belly, and then they'll have one on their back, and they'll be working all day, and they're carrying around and making babies in addition to cooking, cleaning. Some of them work in the fields. If they're not having a healthy pregnancy, no one knows. And if, for example, they have diabetes, they have a very large baby, and if they didn't monitor their diet with that, then they could have delivery complications. And the closest hospital is a 3-hour drive away. Coming in, we do fetal heart tones for them. We check their blood pressure and just make sure they're having a healthy pregnancy. One of the things that they take away with them is vitamins, because their diet is lacking a lot of things that they need to produce a healthy child.
One of the things I'm most proud of is that we took a Mayan man who lives in this area, speaks this Mayan language, Canjobal, and we sent him to university for 4 years to be a nurse practitioner so that he could come back to this clinic and provide medical care every day.
Man asan hertol chu atender anima hun ku ye tok ya ilal ma maxil chi haye kok baitel chi abdullah qismi manil sino que también chi el kasto hun aldeas tanto ashka ye tok hun en carro hun chi clínica sobre ruedas chi hil tok bish ish ayok yalan unin bish iqal el ish chi hil tok han ta kaush na hil chek tok yiban isqina le bish unin wal ay chi kan yalan unin shiwi shatetal chi haye tok yiban ismi manil bish yet cuando shkan yalan unin. Entonces yo walid illa ite junto como hochtak bei hunsan lugar bei kahano nekti am maxil chilon de shin yilla ite hunsan kaush na khiltu shiwi shatetal shay to yib ane wish tanto ashka shay hunok ilia chi hayib ane wish man asan tor ay kib shara unin.
He can flag potential catastrophes in childbirth and make arrangements to get those women to a hospital, which is considerably far away, and it has made a big impact on maternal and infant death.
Having access to care to the women, and it's not just the pregnant women, because I see lots of women. Sometimes I think it's just they know that someone cares about them, and they just want someone to listen to what they have to say.
As much as the medicine we offer, the caring, compassion, and concern counts too, maybe even more than the medicine. Another part of healthcare that we've been able to expand dramatically is eye care.
It's such an amazing thing to watch somebody put on their first pair of glasses. Giving people the opportunity to see is amazing, because if they can't see, they can't walk. If they're a young adult or a medium-aged adult and they lose their vision and they can't see, they lose their job in this area. They become an instant burden on their family and their culture. Giving these people the ability to see allows more opportunity for them to take care of themselves and eventually solve some of the limits that they have here. You know, for the children, that opens the whole world. If a child can see in school, they can learn in school.
The original school for Nuevo Eden, when they established this village, looked something like this. Corrugated steel roofs, boards on the sides. The original schools had no concrete floor. They had no lighting, no power. Today, the school looks like this. This is a single classroom school. What they will do normally is they will place the children in rows by grades. So the teacher will pretty much teach six grades in one morning, despite the fact that it's something that is very rustic. Children enjoy enormously coming to school every morning and getting the opportunity to get educated. We believe in improving education because this is the key factor for people to break out of the poverty cycle. Education, health, and any infrastructure related to both of those bigger programs.
I think the general state of health is better. People are being educated in how important hygiene is, how important good nutrition is. We're working on that. I mean, it's a work in progress. A lot of times I've seen a lot of kids have every tooth in their mouth pulled out.
We pull teeth, we pull lots and lots and lots and lots of teeth because there are serious issues with water safety. You have to boil the water to rolling boil for 20 minutes to make it safe. But when you have, a family of 12, it's difficult. And not to mention that for a large part of the year, there's no water source here. So they have to go down to the river. They know it, but the reality of giving people nothing but water all the time is difficult, especially when the food and beverage industry started, trucking up here these low price snacks and drinks and all of that, but they're high sugar, high acid, and it's just taking a huge toll on the teeth and a huge toll nutritionally. And if all you eat is beans and rice and beans and rice and beans and rice, and maybe once every month or two you get a little bit of chicken, well, that orange pop tastes fantastic.
Capaz ay dia que kaiti yustol chi wa ayudare chin trahi isiem y chin colone wa estos anehal yin kan hobal kalin español. Objetivo ma hunis meta eti tolchi yi elapnok bay hantach anima kahan bay hun comunidad ti yustol chi yoche heptol watch tol ay watch hun sa unintuk am chi ahya ilye Yutol yin sha abilal yuhun abil chi hay unin kaiti asha hunsa unin chi hay kaiti hantach anima icham ache chuche hunsan sha chi hay kaiti is objetivo eti yutol am chi ahya ilyeb yutol watch kalisyeb chi ek masani abil am chi ahya ilyeb.
I was a pretty self-centered person when I first came here. And it's made me understand what it is to relate to the rest of the world. And I just love it. And I've loved to involve other people in that process.
Getting involved made a difference in my life. And with that, we're capable of making differences for other people's lives.
But sometimes it's the Mayans who make the difference in their example of resilience and their joy and simplicity.
People find their pleasure in very, very simple things. Get a soccer ball out and suddenly you've got 20 kids kicking it around. And if it's not a soccer ball, they find a balloon. It can be anything. At home, you got to have uniforms and a coach and a league and referees and that kind of stuff. It's so much different. It almost defies description.
The people here are just incredibly loving. I took like an hour to walk here the first time I was here. Got to stop, meet people. I couldn't speak their language except for the smiles and the hugs. And it was just amazing, comforting, wonderful thing to be here. I join in other missions around the world and stuff. I've got my heart here in Casa Colibri. I'm actively involved in depths beyond just the eye clinic. I guess the best way to describe it is I go home now after these missions and people often hear about how poor the people are here. And they say, aren't you just so glad when you get home, but all the things you have? And I'm like, not really. Not really. I'm actually a bit jealous when I get home of the things these people have that we don't have anymore. The love of the family, the love of their culture, the love of each other. I feel that. I absorb that when I'm here.
You know, most people can't find Guatemala on a map before they come here. I lived as a teenager in North Africa, so my assumption, I always knew I'd go and do international work. My assumption was always that I would go back there because, you know, I was decent with the language, I knew the area. Then I just kept coming back here. For 3 or 4 years here in the dental clinic, I was the only American. It seemed like it was the right thing because it's their country and I was here to help out, but I liked that I was working with all Guatemalans. And I like how I've seen over the years, the Mayan people that we work with more and more become, what's the word, like empowered. And you can see a lot of difference now between the people who are in their 40s and 50s that live most of their life in the Civil War, and they're tiny, they're frail. A lot of times their health is terrible. Some of them are really psychologically scarred. And then it's great to see the generation that was born after the war, and they're totally different people. When I first started coming here, people wouldn't even, they'd shuffle in, they'd have their heads down, but they would never look up in our faces. Now, most people look up and people are starting to complain. And I think that's progress because they're able to identify now, this is a problem and I want to speak up about it. And I think that's a lot of what Casa Colibri is doing, is empowering the people.
Well, my long-term hope has always been that someday we would hand it over to the Guatemalan people themselves. And we're making real progress in that direction. Our executive director is Guatemalan. A lot of our volunteers are Guatemalan. Our employees are all Guatemalan. We have our nurse practitioner and our caretaker of the property and the building. And someday, with help and with teaching and nurturing, and that's my vision, is to turn it over to the Guatemalan people and let this be their project. And so I'll go back to that scene on the first day here when I was so overwhelmed, crying behind the school building. We had a fellow on our team that came with us that found me, and he knew why I had bolted out. And he said, think of it this way. You can't do everything, but you can do something. We can do something. And think of what you can do as a person, as one person. And like Mother Teresa said, the ocean is made up of drops. And so you can do a drop or two or three.
There are still people that need help. It is getting better. There's no question about that. But there are still lots of people in extreme poverty who do need help. And we should always think of them, especially when we have so much.
What can I say? This is probably the best thing that's ever happened to my life, and reorients everything. So yeah, this is Nuevo Eden. It literally means New Eden. This is where we are in the middle of the rainforest in Guatemala. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Thanks. That's who we are. I think it's easier this way. Then how do we do this? What is important for us as an organization? And when you're working in nonprofit worlds, one of the very most primordial things you need to do is you need to establish where you want to go and how you're going to do that. And through your mission statement, it's fundamental to start with a good one. Doesn't mean you can't change it, as time goes by, but that will be the keystone that will frame your work and that will help you keep on track. Nonprofit world, in my experience as executive director, is not a straight line. It's a winding road, kind of like the roads back home, and with structure and with keeping in mind your goals and being faithful to your mission statement, your culture within your organization, I think you're capable of reaching more people responsibly reaching more people and impacting in the most positive ways. It's not always easy because you get tempted sometimes to go sidetracking a little bit outside of what you've established at first. And you know what? There's really no cast in stone method. There are no two alike organizations. We all fall under the category of nonprofits, and that's great. We're all of that kind. But it's my analogy is like comparing two quarter coins. They're both the same. They're made out of the same material, but they're still different. They're two different things. They're two different objects. It's the same thing with nonprofits. You cannot think that there's an absolute guide that will let you know how you do it from A to B to Z, because that's not true. Things change. There's dynamics. There's cultural situations that will form your organization in your final outcomes. In our case, we focus on three things, like we've told you: healthcare, literacy, infrastructure. And within those, you can start diversifying, but you're still within your main frame, if you would. Sometimes we tried other things. Sometimes they worked, but sometimes they're out of your expertise too. So it's very difficult to manage something that sounds like a good idea to me as an individual. But when you go to apply that at the recipient's level, sometimes people look at you in the eye and say, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't ask for that. And then some people start, going towards that directions because they think it's a good idea to them. But you got to stop and wonder, is my idea the best way? Is my idea the absolute truth about, going out about a problem? Sometimes we come with these great ideas and we're out there and we're in the village and like power tools. Oh, we're going to bring power tools so building is easier. There ain't no power. It's a great idea, but it's not applicable there. So things like that, one needs to ask the right questions. How do we do this? How has it been that we've been growing for so long? And it's been, I have to be proud to say, it's been a sustained growth with our programs, with the beneficiaries, with everything that's involved. How do we do this? And again, try to stay focused on your mission, your values, your statements. But one of the most important things is that you can't satisfy yourself of, oh, I reached this step and this is comfortable and I'm going to stay there. No, things change. People change, circumstances change. What we did 16 years ago is probably not applicable anymore today. So you have to be able to adapt yourself. COVID put a stop to most of our programs, and we thought, oh God, what are we going to do? People need us out there. We need to go there because you also feel important. You also feel rewarded. But then you need to adapt yourself to unadverted situations that, at the end of the day, if you think outside the box, it's possible to make it happen. Why? Because of this. You involve the people that are the recipients. You involve the stakeholders. You let them have a voice. You ask them, what would you do? What is it that you need? Because I can assume things. We can all assume you need to have your teeth pulled. You can see that, it's painful. But did you ever ask the parent, what would you do to prevent this? And so you get the parents involved, you get the community involved. And if they are involved and then they follow with the creation of your programs, they function without you being here. Because that's the idea. At the end of the day, supporting programs like this is not about, look at me, I'm doing really good, our organization is this. No, it's about the people you serve, you know? How do you make it happen? A good board of directors, committed people. You want to have your board of directors live the experience. In our case, every single one of them has gone, almost every single one of them, soon to be, has gone to the site, to the work site, to talk to the people, to get involved, to have the firsthand impression. And proactive, a really, really proactive board, because you want to have that dynamic. Otherwise, it's difficult to make progress. You want to have good staff on the ground. You want to have people you could trust, you could rely, that they belong to the community. Obviously, you need to constantly plan. Always plan. Your strategies must change because, again, everything changes. The dynamics. There's a movement that you cannot impede. Fundraising, of course, you can't do anything without money. It's unfortunate to say, but you always need money to bring good. You know, you have good intentions, but you need to materialize it. Evaluate your programs, see how well you're performing. And that's, talking to some people last night, that's something that to me is very difficult, because sometimes you can measure things numerically, but of what you do a lot of time in humanitarian work, it's qualitative, it's not quantities. It's what kind of impact have you being able to provide people with? What kind of difference in their quality of life do they see? And so sometimes it's not only numbers, it's also what you see, the stories, the testimonials of people that have been involved into this. Getting an effective board of directors, what is it? Different ages, different genders, different professions, different economical circumstances. Very important to have people that are involved, are committed. They're committed here. They're committed here as well. What can they bring to the table to improve the quality of life of others? You know, sometimes you're really eager, but sometimes you have to think and stop and think, is this the right fit? Is this something that person would like to do? Would they want to get involved? How much work do they want to have? You have to tell them from the start, you know, what is it that we expect of you? What amount of time are you going to put into it? And what can you expect of us as an organization? Because if you're transparent from the beginning, then you minimize your problems. Understanding your responsibilities too. I mean, how we function as everybody's got is part of a task force. It could be medical, it could be financial, it could be education, it could be infrastructure, but they need to understand what their role is. This is very, very important. The strategy and the direction. The board of directors should be an entity that will provide guidance, that will provide resources. But in many cases, our boards of directors and our directors themselves actually do the hands-on work. And that's where one needs to be very clear that it's possible, but sometimes in many organizations, it's confused with, I see it all, I do it all, I say it all. You know, and instead of being a guidance and a resource provider and letting the executive part or the staff do the actual work, it gets a little confused. So if that's clear, it's easier to function in tandem. Committees and task force, for us, it's worked wonders because people then get to choose what they're good at, what they could bring on. And if you divide the amount of or the volume of work that your organization is doing, then it's going to be easier to break down the adversities, the problems that present themselves. Sometimes if you don't have that, certain persons will tend to overwork themselves And that's where the frustration comes, and that's where it's the nonprofit is not growing. And it's not because you don't want to, it's just because it becomes too big to carry. The staff and volunteers, you know, you need to take your time to find the right staff. I mean, not everybody's made for this kind of work. Not everybody is willing. In our case, we're like, it used to be a day and a half of travel to get to where I live to work. You know, it's like a day and a half to go to work. Wow, that's not everybody does it. And then you have to spend time there. And then people really, really need to find themselves and find the fit, you know. People from the community, people that understand the problems they're trying to address. That's the most important thing. Try to have good leadership. Try to get involved. Try to. If you're a good leader, you can show the way. And if you can show the others to be leaders within their communities, then it's easier. Then you get buy-in. Then people cooperate with you. Again, we implement the programs, the staff does. Board provides oversight. I can't stress that enough. I mean, yes, it's nice to have the board really involved, because in our case, the board members are doctors that come, or dentists. But most of the people you saw in the video are part of the board. And so there's that too. The satisfaction of doing it with your hands as well is very important. But when it comes to operational things or the day-to-day work, it's important to have that, you know, accompany both. It has to work together. What do volunteers want? Because sometimes you're looking for volunteers, and sometimes people say, well, we're looking for volunteers, but we don't exactly know what we're looking for. So this is a real generalization, but these are the things that will drive somebody to be a volunteer. You want to help each other. You want to be involved in your community. You want to get involved in a project that's meaningful to you, that may be meaningful to the community. I would add to this is selflessness. Is you give yourself to others. You know you have something to provide. You know you have something to give to your society. It could be anywhere. It doesn't have to be Guatemala in the mountains and the tropical forest. And, you know, people get this idea, wow, this is an adventure. This is like Indiana Jones kind of setup. It is, but it isn't. You know, you could be anywhere. It could be here at home. You could be selfless. You could have selflessness right here, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in a country like mine. It could be anywhere. It could be anybody. Have new experiences. Be worldly. You know, this is something that's very important. Expose yourself to new things. It's sometimes you fear new things, but it's fine. And it usually turns out to be okay to be exposed to other things. Use their skills. What are they good at? Is it computers? Is it science? Is it medicine? Is it architecture? Is it building? What is it? What do they bring to the ballgame? And that's very important. Your strategic planning, and it's individual to every organization. Your strategic planning will get defined at the end of the day by the activities you do, but this is a good outline of what you can do. Again, the keystone, your mission, your vision, and your values. You got to stick to them. You got to revise them too. Once in a while, it's a good thing to analyze. Is our mission statement still valid today for what we're trying to do? And if it's not, what can we do to improve it? It can change. It's okay. Sometimes you realize down the road that didn't really fit, or it doesn't really fit anymore. And that's fine. It's like outgrowing your clothes when you're a kid. It's the same thing. Assess your current situations. See if you're accomplishing the goals that you established for yourselves. It's always good to have something to look towards. Where do I want to get this project to? Like we say, In the future, we would like to turn it over to the Guatemalans and make it a completely Guatemalan project. That's your goal. What are we doing to get there? Are we prioritizing our work towards the best strategies that are working at this moment to accomplish what we want down the line? Write a plan, have a plan. And because nonprofit work tends to grow very, very organically, that's where you kind of start sidetracking. You know, it usually starts with a couple of people that get exposed to a situation and you have a feel for what you're seeing and you want to do something about it. And this is great. But there's a difference between wanting to do something about it and you start going out, spinning your wheels, and you have no direction. You're not narrowing down your objective. And that's where it becomes wearing. It gets stressful sometimes, and it doesn't have to be. As long as you have a focus, write a plan. What do you want to do long-term? Many organizations don't have an exit plan. And we're not going to live forever. You have to think about future. Implement your plans. See if it works. And it's fine if it doesn't. We all make mistakes. And it's a part of the learning process. It's okay. Review and evaluate and see where you are with it. Is it working? Is it not working? How do you measure your performance? What kinds of tools do you want to use? Once again, this is very, very, very unique to each one of the organizations. You can define your matrix and gauge yourself that way. But again, there are many, many tools that you can utilize. But are we doing individual performances? Are we assessing how our staff is working? Are we assessing how our board is working? Because everybody needs to know where they're at. It's important. You disregard that. Sometimes people will think, no, you only have to evaluate what the outcome of the staff is. But what about the direction you're getting from above? Are we all on the same page where we are with that? Keep track of your accomplishments. Celebrate your small victories. It keeps you alive. It really does, because if you're really, really greedy and you're looking at the big prize down the aisle, you're not really going to enjoy the process. There's that part. Small successes lead to huge success, and that's important. And celebrate that. It's important to remind ourselves. In my personal experience, I started doing humanitarian work in 2001. And you forget about what you've accomplished. It's been so long, or you look forward, but sometimes it's good to look back and say, what have we done? We sometimes lose track. We lose objectivity sometimes with that. Extremely important. Without money, it's almost not possible to be able to execute programs. How do you get money? How do you do it? In our case, it's people that help us. At Casa Colibri, most of our funding comes from individuals. 90% of our funding comes from individuals. Very specific things come from grant writing for specific projects, because that's usually when you go with your grantors. It's something that's very finite, very defined, but sometimes it's not enough to make it work. So tell your story, much like we did here. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a very, very professional video like we have. We are fortunate to have this incredible, talented young man out of Michigan who this is his profession, and it helps us to tell our story. But get together with friends, share what you do. It comes from here. Tell your story. Don't get bored of telling it. Repeat yourself. Share stories of people you're serving. Share your successes. What, we've accomplished this thing in my community, and this is great, and people are coming to it. And would you want to get involved? Would you want to participate? Do you want to help us? Ask. Don't be afraid to ask. People want to give. People will give. People that give, no matter what. No matter COVID, no matter what's going on. Whoever wants to help and give will give. That's as simple as that. Thank your donors, acknowledge them, show them what you're doing. Make events. Think outside the box. You could sell cookies, you could sell whatever. I mean, we've done golf ball drops out of helicopters. We've done destination Guatemala golf trips. We've done coffee sales. We've done anything. You could sell anything for a good cause. Everything goes. There's no limits. You're your own limit. And if you're afraid to ask, that's your greatest limitation. If you're not good at asking, ask other people on your board to help you out. You don't necessarily have to know it yourself. There are people that know, and they want to contribute that way. And maybe there's somebody that's got skills, and that's the way he contributes. That's generally speaking. Another very important one is social media. What we do at Casa Colibri, we got birthday fundraisers. It's my such and such birthday. We got friends, their kids got married. They didn't want to have gifts. They did a Facebook fundraiser. Don't give me gifts, donate. Think outside the box. Use all your tools. This is technology era. I mean, you guys know it better than I do. I mean, and it works. It really does. So here's how we function. Like I said, 90% of our contributors are individuals. 7.6 are grant, and then you got 2.4 from others. This is how we operate. 81+% of our budget goes strictly to programs. We try to keep as little as possible our administrative costs, because this is not for us. This is to help people. And it's extremely important that people realize that, to be transparent, to let people know how you execute your funds, because you're not here to serve yourselves. You're here to serve others. And it's extremely important. And see, all these people you see here, there's two new board members that are not here, unfortunately, but see the variety of people we have. See what the variety of ages, of ethnic groups, of dynamics. That's what the world's made of. And if you have that on your board, I mean, you are going to be successful in your nonprofit. There's no doubt about it. It's yours. It's enjoy it. That's how it works. I mean, for us at least. I wish we could help others to function just like us, but like I said, there's no cookie cutter. There's no two alike. There are guidance. There are tools to help you be guided, but nothing is cast in gold. If it works for you, go ahead and do it. As long as you stay within those faithful to your premises. That's all that matters. Pitfalls. We're not perfect. I mean, we learned the hard way many times. Most of the times, that's how we learn. Micromanaging, God, that's probably the worst one. I want to do it all. This is my project. And when you're squeezing everything into your hands and not letting be helped, that's usually when people get drained out of their passion. Delegate, involve people, understand your role. Where am I standing? What are my boundaries? What's my obligation? Where am I standing? Don't trespass that, because then that's where you start making mistakes, and it's just not good. One of the most important things to me personally is to be culturally aware of where are you going to be working at? Who are you going to be working with? And it's not exclusive of international programs. It's for every single nonprofit that exists. There is a culture where you work out of. It could be in your neighborhood, it could be in your town, it could be the culture of your own organization. You have to understand. You have to sit and listen and watch. Be there. One of our board members says, have divine laziness. Divine laziness is, imagine yourself going to, you pick the country. You go and sit and observe and ask the people what they like, what they want, and let them tell you. Let them guide you. That creates understanding their culture. Because here I am, like Linda said, oh, we want to get books, or scholarships, or for sponsoring kids to a school. Yeah, so you say, oh, I'm going to sponsor 72 kids to go to school. And you think you've done really good, but next thing you know, you have a line of 200 behind you. How do you manage that? Right? Or is that the right solution? Is that the first solution? Did you ask them? Did you ask their opinion? Are they happy with it? Don't assume. And sometimes the solution is not that directly. It could be something very simple that empowers the person and allows that person to fulfill that personal commitment. Putting my kids through school. Giving them the tools. Is one thing, it's very easy to go and assist people. You're in, you're out, goodbye, I had the experience, and you're long gone. But what happened to that person? There's an expectation that was created, and the worst of it all is to create codependency. The worst of it all, where probably the solution is it costs less money, it involves the people, and you just watch basically how they embrace it, they make it theirs, and it's successful. And it's the big word right now is it's sustainable. That's what happens. Don't implement things that are not realistic. Some person told me one day, you know what you need? That's the worst. You know what you need? And I was like, yeah, what is it? You need to have offline network of, it's like a computer hard drive with its own Wi-Fi signal to hook up to the, I don't know what they call them anymore. And you could have a smartphone and you can access that, and it's like downloaded content, encyclopedias and what have you and whatnot. And it was like, yeah, that's great. We don't got power to charge that thing. That's super, And no, but we could solar panels. So you add one more layer on it, right? And it's like, no. But they need a specific time of smartphone. What is that? It's like, that's the most common error. Yeah. I think you need this. Instead of, what is it that they need? Let's go ask them. Let's go talk to the people. What do they want? Never pretend you know better. No matter what your circumstances, no matter what your academic degree is, you can't think your superior thought process vis-a-vis who's going to be receiving what they're going to get, because we don't know it all. The most profound lessons I have learned in my life come from the most simple people I've run across. And that knowledge you don't get in books, but it's you as an individual have to predispose yourself to that. And stop thinking, like we say in my country, you're the last Coca-Cola in the desert. You're not. We're not. It's just as simple as that. Don't sidetrack from your mission statement, values, and visions. And allow yourself to make mistakes. Face yourself against failure. Sometimes programs won't catch. Sometimes it won't work for the most effort you put into it. And then you're banging your head against the wall. How come it didn't work? Why didn't it work? Well, maybe because it wasn't the right fix. So you got to allow yourself to accept that, learn from it, and move on. Because if you get stuck in failure, then you're failing other people as well. You not only are you failing yourself, you're failing your objective, you're failing your missions. And that's what I got to say. Does anybody have any questions? Yes. Our biggest roadblock. Our biggest roadblock is ourselves sometimes, because when you, like my experience, my personal experience is that I got very overwhelmed with my work. I made it extremely complicated for myself. And not being able to communicate that to my board was a problem for me. So personally for me, it's not communicating when you're in distress, when it's not working for you, and say yeah. And that's another thing. You have to learn to say no sometimes. Yeah, and that's oh, you and your question. I mean, it depends what circumstance. But yeah, I think one is the greatest impediment to itself, and then because you start being really negative, then it's contagious to others, and you lose focus. And I think that's one of the bigger problems. The problem doesn't lie on the people you're serving. 90% of the time, it's you. Yeah. I'm extremely sorry. I'm almost deaf.
As the mission statement shifted after COVID-19, and what are new policy developments the program?
Our mission statement did not change with COVID at all, because everything changes. Our mission statement is improving the life of Mayans and Northwest Guatemalans through education, health, and infrastructure related to it. That's not changed. The circumstance around us has changed, but the mission is still the same. People are still getting sick. People are still not going to school. To this day in my country, they're not back to classrooms. That's the biggest impediment right now. That's what COVID slowed us as much as the rest of the world. We could not go there physically. The blessing is that the people on site and the people we serve stepped up. And it is only starting to be sustainable because of that. And maybe we couldn't have seen it coming, that it was becoming sustainable because there was nothing that challenged you. And now I think this is one of the most rewarding happenings. COVID is a blessing for us because we know people adapted and thrived without us being there physically. And you can feel good about that, you know.
The people that come from other countries to volunteer and stuff, like if they go home and now something does happen, like COVID, where they drop flights and you can't get certain places and stuff, you guys have a plan in order for like providing the services to people like that aren't there. So just because like transportation stuff stops doesn't mean that the need for those people. If you have your engineer going, there's what do you do?
Yeah, and that's a problem that is very difficult to manage. And because it's happened, sometimes you need to change staff, for instance, or somebody decides to go work somewhere else, or We can't go with a medical mission. That's the difficult part. What we are trying to do about it is network with the community of local service providers like the public health system. We're trying to work with them to offset those things, but it's something that to this day is not completely resolved, and it's a work in progress. So it keeps you engaged, for sure.
Well, I know that you said you guys try and measure how you're doing. Is there a specific rubric that you use or to determine whether your staff is doing, whether you're reaching your goals, whether you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and headed in the right direction?
Yeah, it took us 16 years to realize that, you know. It only has been recent that we're doing self-evaluations. And still we ran across cultural barriers with that, because when you talk about self-evaluations here, everybody does it. Back home, no one does it. So when you go to try to implement that, is like, there's resistance, there was certain roadblocks, but you have to work around that. You got to adapt any kind of tool you can get your hands on, like a self-evaluation, for instance, and adapt it to the people you're talking to. That's in terms of people. In terms of measuring success, for instance, that's what we were talking about last night. How can I measure success? Well, there are kids that run around now with a full face after a cleft lip and palate surgery. That's a success. There are kids that are kept in school longer because we start doing library or book exposition to kids when they're really little, and now they're keeping longer in school. You see, we are seeing, and I hope I'm right, we're seeing children of the population we serve with the prenatal services being born with less physical deformities, for instance. Neural tube defects, we don't see as many. But it takes a whole while, and it takes a specifically targeted manpower to go out and collect that data, because it's not easy. Many times the data is not factual, it's not numbers, but you have to go out and get it. Like, for instance, one hard number we know is that nowadays we have about 150 women that attend our clinic on wheels per month for prenatal checkups. When we started, there was only like 30. So that's how you can measure it. But again, there's nothing standard to fit all. You have, by exercise, you got to start implementing yours to fit your own necessities. You and then you.
Oh, my question, well, I have two questions. So with regards to stakeholder involvement, I'm curious as to whether, I didn't actually, I don't think I saw other Guatemalans on board.
Correct.
That would be one question, is you look for that kind of involvement in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're designing programs, like in the United States, we would do surveys, or we would do some sort of formal request for information of what people want.
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing that in a population that is obviously not going to take a survey, or, how are you doing what it is they need?
Exactly. So that's very interesting you say about the board of directors. It's taken us 16 years to start shifting towards the Guatemalan board to become more involved and more active. Why? Because for one thing, people need to get more involved. Culturally speaking, in Guatemala, it's more difficult to do pro bono work. And so you got that hurdle. But our board, see how we grew up. It was an adventure of two people that then carried on to involve more people, that formed the board, that now is trying to shift over to Guatemala, to the Guatemalan board. So that's how we have evolved, and that's how we are trying to include people now. Right now, we have in the Guatemalan board, we have 3 indigenous people that are from the region. You know, we have some professionals from the field of medicine, we have professionals in other fields, and it's a smaller group, but we're starting little by little to trying to transition towards that. How do we determine what kinds of programs people need? You go out and ask the questions. They're not going to fill out a survey for you because a lot of the population doesn't know how to read and write. So you go out there and you talk to people. What do you think are your problems in your village? Kids don't have schools to go to. That's generally the number one thing that people do. We don't have access to clean water. We got to go and get the water in the river and we got to boil it and there's no running water. Or our women, our children are dying when the babies are being born. So you go out to the different villages and you sit and talk and ask the questions in their language so they understand you. And that's how you can start more or less identifying where you go. It's a less formal process, but we try to make it as similar as possible to a survey. And we are constantly, like right now, we're trying to implement a new needs assessment. Where are we right now? What do people expect right now from us? What do they want? But it's a work in progress. Very observant. Right. Please.
Providing and improving education to the community. So do you get to experience and see the impact of your effort in terms of children growing up and then earning their livelihood for themselves and their families? Because I think that's the end goal of the education that you provide to the children, to the community. And if the answer is yes, then can you talk about some examples that?
Yeah, you have to be very, very patient because it doesn't happen overnight to see the end result of a program like education, for instance. We've seen it where there's a couple of examples. A young lady who has no parents came to us and said, could we help her with her schooling? And yeah, we did. We normally don't do individual help like that. But this young lady, with the help of the programs we installed, ended up having a nurse technician degree in her community and now is working back. She worked for us for a while, but now she's on her own and she's working in her community. So you can actually see the impact of what you are doing. But bear in mind, we're starting with the really, really, really little ones. So from where we started implementing these kinds of programs, I mean, we've not seen them graduate yet, but we're almost there. The trouble is with those things, it's a more of a long-term proposition. So you need to be patient and you need to stand the test of time to be able to see your end result. But yeah, hopefully I'm going to grow old, and I'm going to get to see it, you know. Anyone else? Oh, you repeat yourself. Go ahead. What do we look for in the hiring process? We look, and that's a real good question because you make a lot of mistakes. So in our case, right now, our hiring process, we have a task force that is our HR task force. And for instance, for the health part of what we're doing, we're looking at what kinds of professionals of health are located where we are. Because we're 3.5, 4 hours away from a university. And that university only has a program for nursing, for instance. So what do we have to work with right now? What's available where we are? Ideally, it has to be someone that it belongs to that culture, that understands the language. There's a language barrier that's big. 90% of the people out there speak their traditional language, not Spanish. So we need to have that kind of person. We need to see what her desire or their desire of learning is, because you probably are not going to be able to find the exact same ideal person for what you're looking for, but you can help them grow into that. What we're looking for right now is to involve part of the community in the hiring process. What do you think about that person being from your culture? Do you think it's the right fit? Do you think that person is respectable? Do you think it matches with your community values? Because you could bring someone from Jupiter, but they're not going to understand the dynamics of where they are. And that's tricky. It's not standard. That's one thing we need to understand. Depending on where you're working out of, it can be easier or more difficult. It's easier in a place like here, where you understand what the dynamics of here is. But when in Guatemala, just for instance, Guatemala has 23 different ethnic groups with 23 different Mayan dialects. And after Civil War, which, to add one more layer, after Civil War, people were brought back to our country from different ethnic groups within Guatemala, and here's a piece of land, make a village. There's no cultural attachment with those original people that resettled. So you got to make it all over again. So those are the things you want to look for. At least for us, that's what's important. To find a person that's culturally apt to function in a place like that. And obviously have the professional skills. You can't bring a carpenter to deliver babies. That's for sure.
I noticed like all baseball. You recognize like, do you like value for when we hire doctors and stuff, do you value like an American degree over like a one degree, or how does that work?
Well, we're not there with a doctor yet. But like for the schooling of medicine at home is very, very similar to the one in the United States. We follow the School of Medicine of the United States, just to give you an idea. So, but in our ideal situation of having a doctor out there, it's not happened yet, because people with higher education tend to go to the bigger cities.
Like, if they're like one thing, you're like certified, right?
Yeah.
You recognize people from like who like school Guatemala, not to mention degree there, you recognize them.
Of course, you have to. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Of course, all the people we want to be, these people on the videos are volunteers. The Mayan man you saw there with the glasses, with the clinic on wheels, he got his degree in Guatemala. And so that's what we try to do. We try to get professionals from our country with Guatemalan education. Why? Because otherwise it would be very complicated to adapt a foreign's education to our country. You need to have a lot of different processes. I don't know if I'm filling your answer, or is it still nebulous? Because one thing is to be a volunteer medical professional there, than to be a Guatemalan professional. If you're, like for instance, if you're a doctor from the United States that wants to go and volunteer there, you need to send in your CV to a Guatemalan physician who will represent you with the Board of Medical Society in Guatemala to allow you to go and practice. But if anything goes wrong, that Guatemalan professional is responsible for whatever happens. So that's how we make it work.
Do you have both an American board of directors and a separate Guatemalan board of directors?
Yes, there's two different entities. We work together. There's a Guatemalan entity and there's a U.S. entity.
How do they communicate back and forth to kind of make shared decisions?
I'm the middle person in there.
Where do you go to your
Everything, yeah. So I serve on both boards. No, I don't serve on the U.S. board. I serve on the Guatemala board, but I am the executive director of the U.S. counterpart. So it was necessary to have that because of Guatemalan regulations. You need to have a Guatemalan organization based there to be able to legally run. So that's why there's two separate entities.
At the most fundamental level, the challenge of overcoming roadblocks and doing what you do. You shared the story about getting to a mud puddle to get your truck, your pickup truck, up to the Casa Colibri, and how the women helped you. Can you share that?
Oh yeah. So I mean, this is a story that takes 16, 17 years ago. There were no roads. The villagers had built the roads by hand. So imagine they're chopping trees from the rainforest, making a 6-foot wide trail. And then after that, they bust stones by hand and they pave it by hand, just with stones. And we come down to this ravine, and instead of a bridge, we have 2 planks that are about 3 inches thick. They're probably 10 inches wide, and they're probably about 6 feet long. And the ditch is about 4 feet deep. We're in the mud, tires are full of mud. We hit the planks and off we go. And we derail from this so-called bridge, right? So here we are, stuck. I'm here with an American person and myself, and we're thinking, no, God, no, we're stuck. We're not going to be able to get out of here. I got to get them to the airport. We broke the car, maybe, I don't know. And then the villagers come out and say, well, what's going on? And well, the car is stuck. So the men, they bring out these big poles of wood and they're trying to pry us up. And here we're looking around, and how can we do this? I mean, there's one tire's off the ground about this high. And how do we get out of here? We don't have tools. There's no AAA you can call and, bail me out of there, And so the women start gathering, and they got their babies with them, and, they're carrying stuff, and they're like, oh, the light bulb goes on. If we add weight in the back, then the front is going to lift. So, ma'am, can you hop in? And then she did, and then another ma'am, and another kid. And by the time we were able to fit about 30 people in the box of my pickup truck, 4 wheels on the ground, and so, but you got to adapt to it. Who would have thought, well, we only need women and kids to fix this? I mean, that's the kind of thing you want to do when it comes to roadblocks. Think differently. The solution might be something so simple, so not evident. That's the right word. It's the answer is not evident. You just gotta quit staring at the problem. Look around you. What do you have? Make it work. Limp along if you want, but make it work.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.